This show knows how to start an episode. So friggin' fun. Great montage, great editing, fun music, just a great way to start. Brian is being interviewed about Lucy Church, an agent he learned a lot from. But before we can hear what Brian has to say, we go straight to a flashback to Brian confronting Mr. Sands. Sands will not confess to being behind the death of the evidence clerk, and all throughout this flashback where he and Brian are talking, Sands is still suspicious of Rebecca. He doesn't believe that she will let it go like Sands and Mara want. Back to the interview, catching up on the mission. Brian tells the interviewer that he was woken up at 3 a.m. because a list of every undercover agent has been stolen. Brian is cocky because the guy in charge says, "I want you and your team." And Finch laughs and leans over to Boyle and said, "My team." Rebecca, once again carrying on this interview style of the episode, Rebecca is now talking about how she knew Lucy in her days at Quantico and how Lucy was pulled right before graduation to go undercover in a prison, which is, crazy that somebody was so good that even before they graduated, they were put on a mission. Brian tells the interviewer that finding the undercover agents was easy, all of them except Lucy Church. Brian is legit having his team hold signs saying Lucy Church, and wouldn't you know it, it's Brian who finds her. Lucy wants Brian to join her on her undercover operation, and of course he does because he sees even dangerous things as potential fun. Back to the interview portion of the episode, James, that sad FBI analyst, wants reimbursed for Aloe because he was out in the field looking for Lucy and nobody told him she was found, so he was out for 12 hours and, had a lot of skin issues. Thankfully, there are more than 12 hours left for you to get Everlasting Survivors Volume 1 all day long, the relaunch on Indiegogo. There's a link in the description. You can follow that. You can get Cover A and Cover C, a pair of Hicks. You can get Cover C and Cover D, a pair of Crooks. You can get the all-in pack where you get Cover C, D, E. You get 2 posters. You get a t-shirt. You get a hat. There are a plethora of options when it comes to this campaign for Everlasting Survivors Volume 1 all day long. Thank you, and back to the show. In Lucy's interview, she's accused of kidnapping Brian. She tells the truth. She says, "I just opened the door and he got in the car on his own." Lucy's boss wants her to come in, but she is refusing. Lucy needs one more thing, and her boss gives her 48 hours to get it accomplished. In Boyle's interview, he is not surprised that Brian stayed in the field because he probably saw an exclamation point when he heard the word undercover, and so that was a really fun observation from Boyle. The one last thing Lucy needs Brian's help to accomplish out in the field is freeing human trafficked women. Naz approves that Brian can continue getting NZT while undercover. Harris delivers the NZT to Brian out in the field, but while doing so, she tells him that Mr. Sands, she calls him by his first name, not like Brian, who's always formal about it, contacted her and wants to meet up. Finch is obviously not happy Harris is meeting with Sands. However, I'm sure she'll be okay because, it just is too early to get rid of a fundamental character like that. Edward Mara, through Sands, is offering Rebecca Harris a position in the private security team that looks after Mara. Brian took his NZT late in the day for this mission because he's got to be at his best for this one. They're going out, him and Lucy, to hobnob with a bunch of rich types at this big party. And at the party, Finch figures out that one name keeps coming up: Carl Borman. Lucy said that she didn't have high hopes in Brian, and she ended up being impressed with his abilities. And she isn't the only one who's impressed. One of the big bads at this soiree, this shindig, is a Russian big bad named Sergei. He gifts Lucy and Brian a Russian prostitute up in a suite in the big party house place that they went to. And when they get there, the prostitute says that she likes to watch. So Lucy throws her the television remote, and they walk out of the room, and the Russian prostitute is very happy with this. Lucy and Brian have a heart-to-heart about Brian feeling bad. The evidence clerk got killed, although he doesn't completely lay out what specifically is the problem, but we know as the audience. And Lucy gives good advice. She says, if you didn't order a hit, that isn't on you. After the night that Brian and Lucy had, Brian seems more with it for this second undercover assignment. He is going into one of the seemingly legitimate front companies to prove that it's actually a bad organization. And with the power of NZT, Brian quickly figures out that this supposedly above-board business has a secret room with a bunch of stolen passports in a safe, also a little bit of money. And Brian turns that little bit of dirty money into a lot of money by going out and gambling on horse races. The reason being is he thought that once they're able to free these women who were human trafficked, they're going to need money to build a new life. And so that's the reason he turned the bad guys' little bit of money into a big bunch of money. A super fun line, Lucy says, "Remind me to take you to Vegas on our next mission," after Brian reveals that he figured out the place where the big bad is. It's implied that the two of them hook up, but it's not confirmed. Although there is a nice twist, the FBI is cutting Brian off from his NZT until he comes back in, because Brian and Lucy have gone above their 48 hours that they were given to accomplish this mission. Harris figures out that Brian and Lucy did hook up. She doesn't seem pleased by it, but she agrees to help them, but she says that he still doesn't get any NZT, and he has to explain himself to Naz when he gets back. On Brian's third undercover mission, I feel like that he is basically being Chuck. He's carrying around a laptop bag that says Data Dweebs, which is just the Limitless version of the Nerd Herd, and this really makes me wish we could have gotten these two shows to cross over. I think it would have been a lot of fun if Brian Finch would have bumped into Chuck Bartowski. It could have made for a really fun mission. We find out after Brian does his best Chuck impression that Lucy's cover has been blown because all of the undercover agent files have been released to the public, and she has been burned. Rebecca Harris meets back up with Mr. Sands again, this time to make a counteroffer. She asks him on a piece of paper that she slides over, says, "What was your price?" Because Harris looked into Sands' past and figures out that he was MI6 and a big deal, and so she thinks that he had to have been bought off for a hefty price. Not because she doesn't understand that what's got him and all these other people on the hook is the NZT itself. But one thing Harris has figured out is the FBI has a mole. She just doesn't know that it's Brian as of now. Of course, Harris wouldn't sell out. She believes that she not only can figure out what's going on, but that she thinks that there's a chance that Mara's on NZT, and if he's in the person behind the disappearance of the street NZT, that he could be a part of, or if not he, then whoever's behind it is behind her father's death. When we get back with Lucy and Brian, we figure out that she isn't interested in bringing in the big bad. She wants to take him out and tells Brian to go back to the FBI, but he refuses. Yeah, I was right. Lucy isn't interested in taking him out. She pulls a gun, and with only 5 minutes remaining in this episode, Brian is trying to talk Lucy down. Brian, even without NZT, is doing a great job. Brian promises Lucy that he will cover her, says, as long as you don't kill this guy, I will say whatever you need. Just let's take him in. And so she shoots him in the leg, says he's not going to get away. And so Brian returns to the FBI, gets his NZT, and is able to prove all these ties that link these supposedly good businesses to these bad guys. And Brian does cover Lucy like he promised about the shooting, because the bad guy says, oh, she shot me out of nowhere without cause. And Brian's like, oh, who are you going to believe, the bad guy or the FBI agent? And so it was a lot of fun that he is the good guy that he is, and he lived up to his word and then covered her for that. And so I said at this point, I was like, so all is well, question mark? And so as Brian and Lucy are saying their goodbyes, Lucy tells Brian that she knows he's on a drug but doesn't care, because Lucy Church wants Brian Finch to be himself, and because she believes he's a good person. Because all throughout this episode, she's basically questioned who is Lucy Church. She's been undercover so often and so long that she just doesn't know anymore. And so I'm glad we got to meet her. She was a lot of fun. But the episode closed out with Sands having a guy plant bugs in Harris's apartment. And the guy was like, oh, what about the other option? He said, well, if you get the chance, do it. And so it seems like that Mr. Sands is willing to take out Rebecca Harris if need be. This was a really good 4 out of 5 episode. And I once again just feel like that this show deserves to be finished. And it's really making me consider creating a whole structural way of rating shows. But, I'll get into that later on down the line. Thank you for tuning in for this Wednesday Rewind. Come back Friday, where I will retro review WrestleMania 21. Come back Monday for Animation Celebration, the actual review of Wonder Woman this time. It won't get bumped, I hope. And see you next Wednesday for the continuation of Limitless, the series. Thank you.